Hello? Am I in the right place?
Come, weary traveler. Come see what fortunes the cards hold for you.
I've come a very long way. I need some assurances about my future. Ah! Death! I'm gonna die!
Oh, no. Death isn't necessarily a bad thing. It means changes and new beginnings.
What does that one mean?
I think you're fucked.
Good afternoon, Jank enthusiasts! I'm MBT, and this is 10-Minute Testing. Suda format's just 2 weeks away, and while I'd like to say it'll transform the metagame, the reality is that it won't. This is because Konami decided, instead of printing good cards, to fill the set with Arcana Force Legacy support. Anyway, since Rada hasn't finished Legacy of the Worthful, here's that. So here's the list. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Raycon. Raycon's everyday earbuds are perfect for when I need to take an important call, if I decide I want some music on while exercising, or... okay, let's be realistic. I use them while I play Master Duel on the toilet. They give me premium and crisp audio on the go and fit comfortably snug in my big ol' ears. These are like the comfiest earbuds I've ever put on. And their new model is better than ever, with 32 long hours of battery life at full charge and 10 minutes of their quick charge function, which gives you 90 minutes of battery. Great for people like me that forget to charge them until you need to go out. Their protective case even comes with wireless quick charging, so you don't even need to take them out in order to charge them. Plus, the design looks and feels great. Look, you got the little light there. Snap it closed. Ooh. It's slick. I've even gotten my wife a pair because they come with active noise cancellation, which is something you rarely find on earbuds at an affordable price. But Raycon offers all that and more at just half the price of other premium audio brands. Go to my link in the description, buyraycon.com/MBT, and get 15% off site-wide. That's right, 15% off everything on Raycon's website, provided you're taking advantage of our partnership. Now back to the video. So with that, let's assess Arcana Force. Arcana Force, wielded by Sartorius, are a series of monsters associated with the major arcana. Like the arcana, each card can be upright or reversed, designated by a coin flip, and can receive different effects based on if you get a heads or a tails. Often, the heads effect can be game-winning on its own, most famously the world's effect to take another turn, for instance, while the tails effect can be downright devastating, like the chariots, just give this shit to your opponent. While these cards made sense in an anime associated with a character that can manipulate the flow of destiny, competitively they were dead on arrival. It turns out you can't make a powerful archetype wholly reliant on flipping 19 heads in a row, who, aside from pocket players, knew. Despite cards like Light Barrier, which nullify the flip, even if you're Rosencrantz, the payoffs don't keep pace with modern card design. Until now. Despite their presence in the anime, Arcana Force had never actually filled out the major arcana, which means they were a perfect candidate for some modern support. And honestly, they did alright. Like Gen X, Konami was working with one of the worst, most frustrating archetypes of all time, and like Gen X, they built it into a competent, if not fragile, combo deck. Unsurprisingly, this deck has exactly the win con you're imagining, the world. Until this card's banned, any Arcana deck will have to dance around the fact that there's an FTK within their ranks, but thanks to the newly released Hierophant, which specials in Arcana, Sun, which sets a coin-tossing spell, and two of the most powerful consistency tools of all time, they can assemble it with shocking consistency. Even in a world without the world, like Gimmick Puppet, the deck's not terrible at forcing through humongous jackasses and beating your opponent to death. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First up, the Arcanas. We'll begin with Arcana Force 19, the Sun. If a card that has a coin-tossing effect is on the field, it can be specialed from the hand, and when it's summoned, you toss a coin. If it's a heads, set a spell from your deck that has a coin-tossing effect, and if it's tails, destroy all cards in the spell and trap zones. That's an impressively powerful effect to staple to a big asshole that has 2900 attack and a free summoning condition, but realistically, you want to resolve that first effect because the targets for it are unbelievable. After that is Arcana Force 15, the Fiend, and you might be shocked to see this doesn't have an OCG tag on it. That's because this card has already been out for a while. They've been trickling out support for Arcana forces, hoping someone's going to make Empress Control work. Anyway, this card can be discarded to add a light barrier from your deck or graveyard to your hand, and if summoned, you flip a coin. Heads is when an attack is declared involving this card, target a monster on the field, destroy it, and inflict 500 to its controller. And tails is if an attack is declared involving this card, destroy all monsters on the field. Next up, we have Arcana Force 5, the Hierophant. This card can be discarded for the rest of the turn. Your opponent can't respond to your Arcana Force summons, and its coin toss effect is a heads, specials a level 4 or lower Arcana Force from your deck with a different name than the monsters you control are in your graveyard. Summoner Monk with no downside is impressive, but the tails effect specials and Arcana Force to your opponent's side of the field. This seems like all downside, but as we'll see on the fusion, you have the ability to fusion summon using materials your opponent controls. So frequently you will use the Hierophant's effect in order to summon a bad Arcana Force to your opponent's side of the field, turn off something like Imperm, and enable a fusion later down the line. Next up is Goddess of Duality. If normal or special, this card allows you to add a monster from your deck to your hand that has a coin tossing effect. And this is a retrain of a McDonald's card. It's my fun fact about Goddess of Duality. We're playing the Chariot, the World, and the Dark Ruler. Each of these serves a different function. The Chariot is sort of Goyo Guardian, and if summoned, your opponent can gain control of this card. But this card has a low star line, so it plays very nicely with the Hierophant. Arcana Force 21, the World, of course, is your win condition, and that heads effect is how it accomplishes it. During your end phase, you can send 2 monsters you control to the graveyard to skip your opponent's next turn. It can include itself. And Arcana Force EX, the Dark Ruler, is a mechanism by which going second, you can just hit for a shitload of damage. Its heads effect is that it can make a second attack during the battle phase, and it's changed to defense position at the end of the battle phase, Goblin Attack Force style. For spells, we got 3 copies of Arcana Reading, another piece of Legacy support. Toss a coin, apply this effect, and of course you get to pick if Light Barrier is in the field zone. If it's a heads, add a card from your deck to your hand that has a coin tossing effect, and if it's a tails, your opponent adds a card from their deck to their hand. It can be banished from the graveyard to normal summon an Arcana Force monster. Our 2 new ones are Arcana Spread. Toss a coin and apply this effect. Like the last one, you get to choose if Light Barrier is in your zone. As a heads, special a level 4 or lower Arcana from your deck, and as a tails, special a monster from your graveyard with a coin tossing effect. This can be banished, add a card from your graveyard with a coin tossing effect back to your hand. Finally, the Wave of Light is a continuous spell, which should probably named the Light of Destruction, but we accidentally already named a card that. Once per turn during your standby phase, if you do not have Light Barrier in your field zone, you get to toss a coin, and if the result is tails, this just stops working for a turn. Fairy monsters gain 300 attack and defense, and you can discard a card to add 2 Arcana Forces with different names from each other from your deck to your hand, and you can't special for the rest of the turn except for Arcana Forces. Wow. Finally, we've got Light Barrier, which is a field spell that allows you to choose your heads or tails effects. You do have to toss a coin each standby phase to keep it on field and live, but you can just set another one over it, so who cares? We've got Pot of Prosperity, 3 Crossout Designator, and a Called by the Grave. Now, because we are a stupid FTK package that loses to everything, we are playing just so many crossout targets. Ghostbell, Ogre, Ash, Droll, Valor, Fuwalos, Nibiru, and Infinite Impermanence. Infip does double duty as being an actually good card. In the extra, we've got a bunch of guys we're never going to make. IP Masquerena, SP Little Knight, Lina, Phoenix, Unicorn, Access Code Talker, Underworld Goddess, Triple Baguska, the Terribly Tired Tapir. This is our plan B, and boy, do we sometimes have to go into plan B. Of course, that enables both Zeus and Typhon, and 3 of Arcana Force EX, the Chaos Ruler. Combination of the light and the dark can be made with 3 Arcana Forces with different names, special summoned by sending them from either field to the graveyard, and you get to toss a coin on special. If it's a heads, special an Arcana Force monster from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning conditions, and if it's tails, you get a card from your deck to hand that has a coin tossing effect. Additionally, this is a monster floodgate if Light Barrier is in a field zone, which frequently is going to be your backup plan, hoping an opponent with like 3 or 4 cards in hand can't beat a card that just says negate the effects of all monsters on field. Kind of unlikely in a format that includes cards like Druis Worm, but let's shut our eyes and pretend that skill drain still matters. In the side, we've got the other 2 Nibirs, the other 2 Fuwaloses, 2 Perulia, triple Dark Ruler No More, triple Forbidden Droplet, and triple Evenly Matched. So with that, let's jump into a game. Our first match is up against Sword Soul Fiendsmith, and look at that, a Crossout Designator and a Dream. This is a great hand because we get to lead with the effect of the Hierophant. That's going to turn off cards like Ghost Mourner, so then we can follow up with the Fiend, activate the Light Barrier, and then afterwards we can activate the Sun, summoning it to our side of the field and activating the Coin Flip effect. That's going to resolve on heads, and we're going to get the Wave of Light. You can see that we're not giving our opponent a good Imperm because, of course, they can't activate it on Summon. We're going to go Wave of Light, we're going to grab a Hierophant, activate its effect, we're going to go for the Tails effect to give our opponent the World, then the World's going to trigger, it goes for heads, but we're going to send it to the graveyard for the Chaos Ruler. From here, we'll go for the Tails effect, and we will follow it up with an Arcana spread. We're going to go for the Tails effect of that and bring back the world, activate the world's effect, we hit heads, and then we'll go to end phase, tributing our entire board to take another turn. From here, it's just assembling lethal, should be a hop, skip, and a jump. We'll begin with light barrier. It's going to go Tails, unfortunately, but we'll go fiend in order to grab another one. We'll set that light barrier, then afterwards we can activate the wave of light in order to get a couple of cards, activate the effect of the Hierophant, turning off those hand traps once again, and then Arcana spread for the Hierophant. We'll go Hierophant effect for Tails, giving our opponent the fiend. We'll activate the effect of the fiend, of course, that's not going to do too much, and then we'll sun, triggering the sun's effect, here going for the heads effect so we can set a copy of Arcana reading. We'll fire off the reading, that's going to grab from deck to hand a copy of the Chariot. We'll activate reading's effect engrave to normal it out, then we'll activate the Chariot's effect in order to, I don't know, make it Goyo before it's sent to the graveyard for Chaos Ruler. Finally, we are going to summon out the Dark Ruler with the effect of the Chaos Ruler and get in for well over lethal. While infinite impermanence can stop us from attacking twice, it can stop 36, 32, and 43. While the Hierophant is fantastic at dealing with a significant amount of the cards that give this deck pause, it sure doesn't account for all of them. Case in point, our opponent for game 2 is on 10 pi, and they've got a couple of cards that spell instant death. We're going to begin with a copy of Light Barrier. We will go for the Sun. We'll activate the Sun in order to get to our side of the field a copy of the Wave of Light. Wave of Light's going to trigger here because that crossout designator is once per turn. We're just going to pitch that. Then normal summon a copy of the Hierophant, activate the effect, and give our opponent a copy of the World. The World triggers on its way to the graveyard for the Chaos Ruler. We will go for that and then activate the effect here, going for the Tails effect, so we can go ahead and grab a copy of Arcana Spread. As we go for Spread, our opponent's going to Magnamut, targeting our target. Oh god. Now we have pretty much no way to get the world back into rotation. We do have the crossout designator for the Nibiru, but oh god, I mean, we really don't have anything to do from here. We'll trigger the Chariot's head effect, then we'll go for the Fiend in order to grab another light barrier, but we have to pass on this. That should be easy pickings for our opponent, who's going to begin with a copy of the Bestial Lubellion and followed up with a Druis Worm targeting our Sun. They'll go for the Bestial Lubellion and send the Floodgate before linking off our Moon of the Closed Heaven into Requiem. Requiem here is going to trade for a Lacrima. Lacrima is going to send from deck to graveyard another copy of the Greensmith. Then they'll activate the effect of the Requiem into a Necroquip, into a Fiendsmith, into, of course, a copy of Wave High King Caesar. Finally, let's normal summon the Pydra. Go ahead and grab a copy of Sengen Kaiman and go to the battle phase. I have nothing with which to stop this, so Kaiman comes down, gets a Genroku, who will trigger in order to grab a Chundra. Chudra. That's going to get over after going for Pydra and Fadra and Bident, and they'll summon back the Pydra so they can lock us out of battle phase effects as well. 17... Activate the effect, Transcendent, 3K, 16, 15. We are just so unbelievably dead. There's no reason to drag this out. I just kind of want to. So it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent's on Fiendsmith Malice. I really like this build of the deck, and they have opened with a copy of Fualos. We do have an Ash Blossom for that, but I think we're just going to let it ride because we don't do too much summoning. We're going to go for Goddess of Duality here, then afterwards we're going to go for the Sun, summoning it to our side of the field, then activating its effect in order to grab a copy of Reading. Let's go for Arcana Reading here. That's going to grab a copy of the Wave of Light, which we can then activate by sending this copy of the Dark Ruler to the graveyard and getting everything we need. Finally, we can use the Reading to normal summon out Hierophant, activate the Hierophant Tails effect to give our opponent the World, and they do draw a card off that, but it's not that big of a deal. We will link off for the Chaos Ruler, which they will draw for, but afterwards we will go for the Tails effect for an Arcana Spread. We will go for the Spread effect, bringing back the World, and then we'll activate the World. Afterwards, well, I mean, pass it back, you know? Nice Fualos, but if you don't get to use the cards, it doesn't matter much. We do lose the Light Barrier, but we do have the second one in hand, of course. We'll go for Arcana Spread here to cycle this copy of the Sun. We'll go for the Sun and activate the Sun's effect in order to set a copy of Arcana Reading, and this should be all she wrote. The Waves of Light just getting us that little bit of damage over Arcana Reading in order to grab us back a monster before activating Hierophant, summoning Hierophant, triggering Hierophant, and going for the Tails effect to give our opponent the Sun. Finally, we'll go for Arcana Reading to get out the Chariot, then trigger the Chariot's effect in order to keep, before going for a second Chaos Ruler, activating its effect in order to grab the Goddess, and going to battle phase for well over lethal. 1 down, 1 to go. So it's time for game 2, and okay, well, a Fualos and a Dream here. We're going to go for it. They have an Ash Blossom. Probably don't need to watch the rest of this one. They're going to go White Rabbit. White Rabbit here is setting a copy of MTP07 and TB11 to go into Link Decoder. Druis Worm targeting the White Rabbit. In order to summon it to their side of the field, they'll activate the effect of the White Rabbit, taking 300 in the process to make a Red Ransom and trigger the effect of the Link Decoder in sequence. Afterwards, the Red Ransom is going to grab them a copy of Malice and Underground into SP Little Knight, target the Red Ransom, banish it, and then trigger the effect of the Red Ransom to bring it back, summoning it to their side of the field and banishing a copy of Dormouse. Dormouse here here is going to trigger. They're going to bring out the Dormouse, activate the effect to grab a Chessy Cat, then activate the effect of the Chessy Cat and banish it in order to summon itself. From this position, they can activate the Chessy Cat in order to draw a couple of cards to go into White Binder. White Binder here will target the Chessy Cat, banish it, then activate the effect of the White Binder to set a copy of GWC. TB11 is going to banish the White Binder for a Dormouse, then White Binder triggers, summoning to their side of the field for the low cost of 900 life points, and then making a Heart's Cryptor. This is a horrifying end board, especially with the drawn Druis Worm. We're going to begin with Fiend. That's 2 copies of Light Barrier in the grip. We'll go for the Hierophant's effect in hand, then we're going to go for Arcana Spread. We will summon a Hierophant here and activate its on summon effect to give our opponent a copy of the Sun. The Sun triggers here. They're going to go for heads. We will normal summon the Chariot, then afterwards we will go for the heads effect, at which point they can MTP07. Okay, well, Heart's Cryptor here is going to go ahead and get rid of our Chariot, and we might as well just pass here. They're going to go GWC, then they'll trigger White Binder. They'll banish every single name in the known universe, which triggers Dormouse and triggers White Rabbit, summons it to their side of the field, and I mean, at this point, just kicking our teeth in. They will switch the Sun to attack and go to battle phase. So it's time for that all-important Game 3, and while Fualas wasn't particularly important, Perulia might be. Now, of course, it doesn't matter what our opponent has, because we intend to FTK, but a Perulia can really draw them into non-engine. Unfortunately, we can see they already have it, so we're going to go for the Fiend here, we're going to go for Light Barrier. We'll activate the Light Barrier and go for the Hierophant effect, then we'll go for the Sun. They can't activate on summon, so we will go ahead and activate the effect of the Sun in order to set a copy of the Wave of Light. Next, we're going to Wave of Light, we'll activate the effect, we probably don't need Fualos, and we're going to grab 2. Let's normal summon this Hierophant. That's going to give them another draw, but we get to trigger here, going for Tails, giving our opponent the Fiend, and at least the imperms are momentarily off. We'll go Chaos Ruler here, going for the Tails effect to grab a copy of Reading. We'll go for Reading, activate the Reading in order to grab ourselves another Fiend, then activate Arcana Spread in order to bring back the Hierophant. Hierophant's going to trigger here. We'll go for the Heads effect for a Chariot, and then afterwards we can go for the Chariot effect, at which point we get Nibiru'd. Well, you know, that's the way the news goes. As we go to the end phase, we get blown all the way out by a Bestial Magnemot and a Bestial Druis Worm and a Bestial Druis Worm, and even though they only now have found Engine, I think we're just dead to the guys on board. They're going to normal summon a copy of Dormouse and make a Lizardos, use Druis Worm to send the token and go to battle. Boy, that's really embarrassing. Okay, well, FTKs. So we're back with the deck, and, well, what'd you expect? A lot of engaging back and forth gameplay? We're lucky to have made ad revenue. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1. The new Arcana Force cards basically bring the deck from nothing into an actual playable deck with a goal: to resolve the world turn skip and to OTK on your next turn. 2. It's consistent. And importantly, it's consistent even without an active Light Barrier. Hierophant blocks many hand traps from resolving. The Sun is just a free big body that searches anything, so the deck has plays through at least one piece of interaction depending on the hand. And the new fusion, the Chaos Ruler, facilitates an end board piece even if you fail to FTK. While Light Barrier's on the field, he's a floodgate for monster effects that gets really awkward to out with a hand that's missing a few cards. And 3, the deck does have OTK potential. Chaos Ruler can fetch Dark Ruler, a 4,000 beater that can just attack twice, so going second if you stop the board, you can kill them outright instead of turn skipping. And the cons. 1, since the entire plan of the deck revolves around the world and Chaos Ruler, and both of those require setup, the deck will often fold to 1 or 2 hand traps, or any of the lingering floodgates, really. A Dimension Shifter locks you out of Chaos Ruler, giving you no real game plan. Droll can shut off low power hands or force weirder, more vulnerable plays into other hand traps. Nibiru stops you from going past Chaos Ruler Pass, and the Bestials can force you to add the world to hand to tribute summon it with Arcana Reading, which means you have to expend more resources and you need a high roll hand or else you're not FTKing. 2, the deck's tools really do not do anything outside of their main objectives. It's like opening up a tool chest and just seeing 18 hammers staring back at you. There's no board-breaking power built into your engine, so going second is a rough concept. You can sacrifice the consistency of the FTK and play a higher non-engine count, but at that point you're just ending on a floodgate that loses to Imperm. And 3, man, I hate to say this, but it is just not very fun. It's a boring FTK, and there's not a lot of skill expression present in the deck's line. Overall, the deck seems weak and dull, but unlike the last 2 decades of Arcana Force, it is playable. I don't think it's going to see much play due to the vulnerabilities I mentioned, and honestly, thank God for that. So that's that. Thanks so much for watching. These videos are completely funded by, and occasionally suggested by, my patrons, some of whom have paid top dollar to be announced at the end of the 10-minute testings. Here are those people now, for whom I am permanently indebted. About 99 Donuts, Elena Tincher, Alex Perea, Allison Elliott, Ally, APK, Pearly Tier 0, Brett Henry, Cool Name, Damon O'Neill, Dark Rebel XYZ, Derpin Dragon, DJ Elefante, NB Adams, FPS Lord Derp, Garrett Ran, Hergalicious, Night Mary, Legal Rights, Lockstone, Luis Hernandez, Lullaby of Souls, Master of Faster, Matthew M. Derezzo, MBT Play Madolce, Mike Carlotti, N54 Lionheart, Nacho Gonzalez, Nebula Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pombo, Project Mercury, Rohan Doge, Rose Lapine, Serpentax, Shelby Piet, Sly Ninja 43, Soul CLG, Troy Says By Erasure Is Gay, Who's Nick, Wonder Waffle, and Yukika Zami. Couldn't have done it without you.